All right. Welcome back to our Tuesday Spotlights. Where we love to be able to share with you wonderful people that we have met and want to share what they've learned with you because they have great things to be able to impart to us today. And I'm so thrilled to have Jenn Zingmark today. She is a life coach, and I'm going to give you all the scoops in just a second. But Jenn, so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Connie. I'm so happy to be here with you.
We have had great conversations, so I can't wait for her to share with you today. For anyone out there who is divorced or has a loved one that's divorced, and they're maybe thinking about getting back, dipping their toe into the dating scene, it can be so scary for a very good reason. And she helps people navigate this. For 16 years, she's been teaching people how to navigate this journey and how much it has changed over the years. Some things you definitely want to know. But first, let me give you the lowdown officially. Jenn Zingmark is a Latter-day Saint life coach who specializes in helping men and women partner with the Lord to find hope, healing, and happiness after divorce. She is passionate about sharing her knowledge, experience, and testimony with others to make a difference in their lives. She has been mentoring and coaching people through divorce for the last 16 years. She also hosts and publishes a weekly podcast called Joy in the Journey with Jenn. Love that alliteration, to give hope and inspiration to anyone dealing with the trials of divorce. And it is a great podcast, great tips and tools. She just had one recently where likened it to buying a car and the steps that you need to take and all of that. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
Jump right into this. Let's just talk about this whole first and foremost. It is so personal for every single person. But how do you know that you're ready to date? Because I've talked to different women, and when I had divorced several years ago, just that whole feeling of the whole gamut of, I don't even want to think about that, to others who were like, the papers weren't even signed and they were ready to roll. So what are some thoughts on some markers that you're ready to date?
Such a good question, Connie. And I think you said it, it's different for everyone. Some people do a lot of that work of healing and recovering from the trauma in their divorce before they're actually divorced. Other people don't start that work until after the divorce. So it's going to be different for everyone, but I would say some time has passed. It's never going to be a good idea to jump right off of one ship onto another one, and give yourself a little time in there. But another marker that I've noticed with people that I've worked with over the years is that you're at a place where you own everything that has happened in your own life. You are not constantly blaming your ex and everyone else in the world. You have come to a place where you take ownership for whatever has happened, and that you're able to find gratitude every day in your life. That's another marker that I've just noticed in myself and with other men and women. When you're at a place where you feel every day gratitude for the blessings God has given you and the life that you have now, no matter what has happened before, that's a good sign that you're in a healthy place. Also, I always tell something that's so important that we need to learn in life, whether it's post-divorce or any time in your life, is meeting your own needs and taking care of you, right? Whether you're married or single, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, intellectually. It's really awesome how that coincides with the 4 areas of goal setting for the youth, and it applies to everyone. But I've just sort of figured out, if you can do that for yourself and take care of yourself in each of those ways, then you're not like this empty cup waiting for someone to fill it, waiting to give you something that you're missing. You know how to take care of yourself, and you do that, and then you can add to someone else's life, and someone else can add to your life when you are good at doing that for yourself.
Love that. And especially love that owning your own stuff. I think we're going to talk in a second about do's and don'ts about going on a date. But I think one of the markers that really hit me right off the bat was when I did start dating was noticing when people had not done their work. They had not, a lot of it was about their ex, or a lot was their woe was me story is what I call it. And all the things, and very just about, and we've had hard things that have happened, totally understand and validate that. However, That doesn't need to be where we lead off, and it doesn't need to be this blame game or things like that. So I love this point that you make about owning it and watching for those markers for yourself and for others that you're talking with, how much they've owned that, and then that gratitude, and then taking care of your own needs. Love every one of those. That just makes you show up in such a healthy, happy space, and it makes people want to be with someone who has that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. Can you think of anyone that you've worked with that had to learn how to do that, and one tip that you would give for that? Because sometimes, and forgive me for the men that may be listening, but it seems to me that women I talk with and experiences that men seem to have a little bit harder time with being able to own what happened in doing their work. Any tip for helping that along?
Yeah, and I've seen it with both men and women. It's just a place of taking personal responsibility, and we all get to it in different ways and different times. But I would say something that I help my clients who struggle with this with is owning your own story, and you get to decide how you tell the story of your life. And if you can come to a place where you tell your story, your life story, your divorce story from a place of growth and learning and the awareness that everything does happen for our own good and for our own benefit. And there were good things that you can learn from any relationship, especially a marriage. And if you can just take those good things and leave behind the bad things, then that can help you get to a place of ownership. Like, you know what? I get to decide how I'm going to live with this event that has happened. I get to choose how I want to tell this story in the future. And if you can, it's so good to just take your ex out of it completely. Like, you own your story. You get to tell that story any way you want from now on, to yourself and to other people. And it really does matter the story that you're telling yourself and others. And if you're constantly the victim and you're blaming them and they're the villain, then you're going to walk around hurting and angry and resentful until you take that ownership. But if you can just get to that healthy place where you tell the story from, wow, look at all I learned. Look at the growth that I experienced because of my divorce or in this difficult first marriage, whatever it is. It really doesn't have to revolve around that other person. It can be all about you and everything you've learned in your experience. That is just such a healthy, empowered place to live.
Love that. And the energy that comes off that, the feelings and the possibilities, then people want to be part of possibilities. And you also can sit in a place of, I'm choosing who I want to be with, and I'm choosing how I want to move forward and who's going to be part of this new story, and not a feeling of desperation or, like you said, victim mode or anxiousness or something like that. I love that. Let's move to, okay, once you feel like, okay, I've owned my story, I've got gratitude, I'm taking care of my needs, I think I'm ready to open up to that. What are some of the top fears that you see with the people that you work with and that you coach?
Yeah, many people are so afraid of being hurt again. They just are still wounded from that marriage that ended in divorce, and they're so afraid to open themselves up again, that they're going to be hurt. Many people come out with a lack of trust. Many times when a marriage ends, it's because of, loss of trust or infidelity or many other reasons. Another thing I've seen is, especially women, I have seen say, I'm just going to make another mistake. I'm not good at choosing men, and I'm just going to choose a bad one. I give up, like they're afraid to trust themselves to make another choice. Many, many women have told me that. So there are a lot of fears that can, come with you out of this situation. Actually, other women have said, and men, they don't want to be judged. They have this fear of being judged for whatever happened and, the situation that they came from. So there are a lot of fears that come along with working through that divorce, but you can work through those and process them and work it out so that they don't go with you. You can overcome those fears.
So true. In fact, I was just talking with a lady the other day, probably 70, maybe 70 something, early 70s. And I was asking her a question. I've been asked to speak at a fireside for adults, single adults. And I was just asking her, what's something that you would love to hear about? And she said that very thing. She said, how do I know that the person is being sincere or genuine? Because there's so much out there. And at her age, that it was that they'll tell you one thing, but they're not. And that's a very real fear as well, is that people online or when you're meeting with them, they're not portraying themselves truthfully and authentically. So you're right. There are some very real fears. Let's just take one. And I would be curious to know, if it's not too personal, was there a fear? Did you have any of these fears when you had first divorced and when you were first going back into dating? Was there any fear that kind of stopped you or was kind of hindering you from that process?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share about that. I actually distrusted men. And I just had this fear. I really didn't realize it until I was remarried, but I just thought men are untrustworthy. I don't really know if I can believe them. Once I got remarried is when it really started manifesting itself. Like I just had this insecurity about my husband, like, where is he? He's not home. He should be here. And I would get frantic or like want to check where he was or check in with him. And I realized I don't have a reason to distrust him. This is my issue. He's never given me any reason to doubt. And it's when, for me, I actually did that work after I was remarried and I realized I don't trust him and it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with me and my previous experience of, having my trust broken. And it took work. And occasionally it'll come up now. There will be a situation and it'll just, pop up today like, oh, why do I have that feeling? And because I've done that work, I just recognize it as what it is. And it's easier for me to look at it and see it like, oh, I know you. I know that old familiar thought. There you are again. It surfaced. And I can just remind myself, I know I can trust him. And honestly, trust is a choice. It's really a choice that you make. And it gives you peace, really. Ultimately, we all have to choose what we're going to do and the choices we make, how we're going to honor those covenants we make and live our lives. And if we can do that with full honesty and confidence in who we are, and also give that trust to our partner and to others, then we're going to live a much more peaceful, enjoyable life. And I've sort of learned that I give myself that gift. Like I'm going to trust. If I have no reason to doubt, I'm going to trust. And it's just such a happier place to be.
Yes, it's so true. Then this anxiety and what if and living in that space of it's not even been proved yet. And
Yes.
we've had some conversations about this. I think one of those tools and tips that you give for overcoming these fears really dovetails into how to go about dating in a healthy and safe way. And we'll kind of dive into this a bit. But I think with this fears, we talked about setting healthy boundaries, about setting the baseline of what you absolutely will and won't do, or will accept and won't accept. And one of the boundaries we individually, that's an individual choice of what that looks like. Is it going to be same belief system, or is it going to be same financial situation, or is it going to be professional? Where is he at professionally? Where are you at professionally? Or what kind of, what age of kids does he have? Or if he has kids, just really getting clear about your baselines. And I loved that conversation that we had. And I don't know if you'd be willing to share about with your husband. We talked about, because we're Latter-day Saints, and you had we talked about how important the temple is and people attending the temple. Would you feel comfortable sharing that? Because it was so funny.
Sure. I love this story. I tell this story often, but my husband and I actually met sort of as a setup on a blind date. Like we knew of each other, but it was a setup the very first time we met in person, and it was with another couple. And after the date, my husband now had said, well, maybe you and I could get together sometime and just go out, just the two of us. And I was just at a place in my life where I had decided, unless someone had a temple recommend, almost I had this idea in my mind, like I want to meet my person in the temple because that's where I spent my time. That's where I found my solace and refuge during that time when I was separated and single. And it was just such an important part of my life, going to the temple and serving there. I just had decided I want someone that also wants to spend their time there, that values living that life. And so when he asked for my number, I just said, do you go to the temple? We live in a relatively small area. There's only one temple in our state, and that's the temple district. We live pretty close to it. And he said, yes, I go to the temple. And I said, well, I've never seen you there. I go there once or twice a week, and maybe I'll see you there sometime. And you know what? The next time I went, he was there walking around in the lobby looking sort of lost. And I did give him my number after that. I was like, oh, you do have a temple recommend. Okay, well, then we can talk. But that was just like ground level for me. It was so important.
And I think that takes away a lot of the fear. Those setting those baselines of, I will do this, I won't do this. And this is just, I remember someone wanted to introduce someone to me, and I said, is he Latter-day Saint? Does he have a temple recommend? And they were like, and I was like, no offense at all. But it's just like saying, does the person drink? Do they not? I mean, we're not going to match right off the bat. So it's good to get those clear belief systems. And then even within a belief system, whether it's about physical or emotional or spiritual or whatever, but it doesn't mean you need to be exact, but it does mean even within those that you have a sort of an understanding and a connection and a common page of what that looks like and how you're going to roll with that. No, I didn't need someone who was going to the temple twice a week or something like that, right? But I needed to know that this was a core piece of their life. And otherwise, we're not even going to have a baseline that we can connect from. So I love that. That's so good.
So true. And you know what's so interesting about that? That's something we do together now. We serve as ordinance workers together now. Like, it's just been a staple in our whole marriage. And it really just sort of happened organically at that moment when he asked for my number. And I was just like, no, I can't talk to you unless you go to the temple. But it made me articulate that's what is important to me. And it still is. And it is to him, thankfully. So it was a common bond.
And that's so key, and not being afraid to do that. With what I do with women and teaching them to niche down in their speaking, their writing, and being in media for him. We talk about niching down all the time, that there's someone for everyone. You get to choose your niche. What is that niche? What does that look like and feel like that you feel good about? And then once you have those baselines, does he like pickles on his pizza or not? Like, does it matter? No, it doesn't. But those core values are absolutely key. Now let's go into some of the nitty gritty of the do's and don'ts when you actually go on a date. So can you give us some top things that would be helpful? I know there's different people I've talked to and experiences and things like that are just so sweet and bittersweet of the do's and don'ts. Any things that you would love to share?
Okay. Yes. I say you have to be yourself. You cannot try to pretend to be your ideal person or your avatar. You have to be yourself. But something that I see, I like you speak at a lot of singles conferences and events. And so many times I have men and women tell me, you should talk about this. You have to put your best face forward. You need to put yourself together. And I am talking about get your hair done, get your teeth cleaned, like go get a new outfit, like invest in yourself, like put your best effort in pulling yourself together. I've had so many men and women say to me, like, this should be a topic. Like, people need to know, they need to groom, and they need to get a new outfit, or have someone help you pick out a nice outfit and get your hair done and, get a haircut, whatever it is. Like, really put a little bit of effort into putting yourself out there. And I would also say, make sure you have an answer for why did you get divorced that you feel good about, that you're confident about, and hopefully is about you, not about your ex. No one wants to hear like a sob story or hear about your drama. Like, just like we've already talked about, let's look towards the future, talk about the future. Yeah, you can talk about what you've learned from your experience and why you're divorced now, but keep it positive. And I would also say, you can talk about your children, talk about your family, of course, but they want to get to know you. So you should share about yourself. Don't let that be the primary focus. And another tip that I would say is be kind and try to withhold judgment. I think we get to set our boundaries, and for sure we get to decide this is what is important to me. But I think when you're mature and you're dating after divorce, there's so much wisdom and knowledge and life experience behind that face, behind that person. And you can seriously fall in love with that, even if at first glance or first meeting, it's not, like fireworks and all of that. And the other thing I would say is, but at the same time, be kind and maybe withhold judgment. Also, watch out for those red flags, drug abuse or alcohol or lying or, like anger problems, anything that you witness for yourself, like that's going to happen again. Or, like don't ignore red flags. So say
Love
this.
that. In fact, what's that quote? That people will show you who they are the first time and
Mhm.
believe them, right? Believe them the
Yes.
first time. That I totally agree. Looking for those red flags. Now you're not sitting there and you're like, every time they say, he didn't say thank you to the waitress, writing that down. But
Right.
being able to, if something, I call it that twinge. And I get it, if you get a twinge and you're like, that doesn't add up. That doesn't
Mhm.
coincide with what he said before or she said before or whatever. Pay attention to that. And along those same lines of being safe in dating, I think this is a really important piece for us to address at any stage. My mom is single and she literally is just shy of a background check on the people that she dates. I'm not kidding. And listening in conversation, she's also a therapist, full disclosure. And so
Yes.
she's listening. She's like, oh, I can tell he's after a caregiver. He wants someone who's going to be, there but his bedside taking care of him because he's not doing well and he's got gout, and he's got kidney, whatever. And, and she's listening for these kinds of things. I know we had talked about this, that women should know your first date should be in a public place and during the
Yes.
day, if at all possible. I know there was a gal that I know that she invited someone up she hadn't even met. It was online to her house, and she has children there doing an activity in the backyard late at night. And I was like, sweetness, like that
Yes.
is just not a helpful thing. Not going to your personal place of residence, not giving them that information, and don't be shy about not sharing that. Say, I'm not comfortable giving that just yet. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
for sure. I'm glad you mentioned that. You have to be so careful and also let other people know this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. If you're meeting up with someone for the first time, you need to have a buddy system and make sure other people are aware of what you're doing and where you're going. You have to be cautious today.
Yes, absolutely. Now, on that date, since we've talked about some things to look for, what are some good questions to ask? What are some good things to do?
Okay. I thought about this question a little bit because it's been a little while since I've been on a first date, but I actually came up with a good list of things that I think would be really good conversation starters without getting into like the deep, dark, every heavy thing that's ever happened to you. Like you want to get to know a person, but you can't start off with, what's your most traumatic experience in your life? No one wants to hear that. So, something that someone once asked me was, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
Mm.
Love that question. And what are you known for? What are your friends, your family, your occupation? What are you known for? As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up? Or what is your dream job? Or another fun thing that my daughter recently had on a date was, if you could live in any time period, any decade, what would it be and why? Like you can really find out a lot about someone by like their fashion and their music taste by finding out about that. And if they're a foodie or not, if they're into food or if they're like pizza and ramen are good with me, I'm good. And travel, like what's been your most exciting trip you've ever taken, or where's a place you would really like to go? Another fun thing my daughter said someone asked her recently was, if you can only have 3 apps on your phone, what would they be and why?
That's great.
Yeah, it's a fun way to get to know like what's important to someone. And
I think
another
that's
one, go ahead.
so good. And these are sort of, you want to do 1, 2, 3 levels, right? You start
Yeah.
with that surface appetizer level, and then you can get a little bit, into the main entree. But so much nicer if you can ease into a conversation and keep it a little bit light at first, just as you're dipping your toe into that water. That's so good. So
Yeah.
let me ask you now that say that they're done with the date and they've moved on, and then they can decide if they want to see someone again or not really quickly. And then I want to come back to now that you're married, looking back on the dating thing, a piece of advice from there. So I'm going to give you a heads up so you can think about that. But for after the date, there's always, I talk to women and this happens a lot of someone's going to ask you out and you know already it's not a fit. It's just not a match. They're 20 years older than you, 30 years older. I don't know, Sister Nelson and President Nelson, but that's a unique situation. I'm just saying, you just already can tell, no, this is not going to happen. What is a really kind way to be able to share that or to skip around the giving your number?
That's a good question. I would definitely not be shy about not giving out my number. Like I, just like my husband, we're married and I wouldn't give him my number. I am not shy about saying, I'm sorry. Like, no, I don't share my number. Maybe I'll see you here or there, or at least finding a connector person. That's another thing that I think is so important in dating is getting to know common friends. Like, even if you don't beforehand, as you're getting to know a person, it's good to be around their friends and have them be around your friends, because people that know you well are going to pick up on things that you're not necessarily seeing. And especially the more you date and as you get more serious, that is so important to have people, maybe not your children. I would definitely wait on that until you're serious. But people that know you well and care about you, it's important to get them involved and get their more eyes, more ears, more opinions about this person early on, I think is really healthy. What was the question you asked before?
So just gently, like, say you've gone out, but you're like, I can tell this is not a go.
Yes. I had a situation like that happen to me, and I said this, you're such a great person. I'd love for you to meet my friend. And and kind of softly was able to say, like, I think you're great, but I think you would be a good fit for my good friend. Would you be interested in that? And they went out. So yeah, that was just a way that I could gently say, like, you're great, but I think you might be a better fit for someone else.
And I think that in and of itself, I think, when you're dating in a mature setting like this, everybody understands that this isn't about when you're 20. This is, you can tell from the beginning if it's a yes or a no. And if it comes back up later, that door could be open if that was a strong feeling. But it's so much better to just know at the beginning and just be able to say, I've so enjoyed this evening. I just want to tell you honestly, I know your time is so precious in finding someone that's a fit. I don't know that we're a fit, but I appreciate being able to spend time and get to know you because you are a wonderful person. And I appreciate that. Something that lets them know, but doesn't lead them on and make them think that it's going to be more than what it is. Cause I don't know that that's very kind either. And I think sometimes that can happen unwittingly of one person saying one thing and the other may not be hearing it, but there isn't anything wrong with rinse and repeat of being able to say, no, that's how I feel. And I still feel that way. Thanks so much. And I love how you bring up, don't ever hesitate to say, no, I don't give out my number. Another thing that can be said is, I don't give up my number, but you're welcome to give me yours. And I'll let you know if I feel comfortable calling you, so that helps them to ease down, being let down a little bit, but being able to be really open in what you feel comfortable with. And I think bottom line, that is such a key piece when dating, that you are your most confident self, that you realize you get to choose. You get to say, yes, no, I don't think so, whatever that is, and follow through on that without worry about, oh, did I offend that person? Or I hope they feel okay. They don't need a pound cake and a shoulder pat to feel better. We're older. So I really love how you bring that up.
Such a good point, Connie. And I think I love the way you articulated, like you can say, this is a wonderful evening. I've enjoyed our time and getting to know you, but I just don't think it's a good fit. Thank you for, spending the evening with me. Like, I really appreciate that honesty. And I think you're right. At this point in your life, you're not just dating to date. You're not just out there to make friends and, go out and get a free meal or whatever it is. You seriously are in control of your life, and you're deliberately choosing how to spend your time. And at this point in your life, those evenings are valuable, and it is in your wheelhouse. It's in your ability, your control to deliberately make decisions about how you want to move forward. And there's nothing wrong with articulating exactly how you feel. You really need to.
I love that. And with that kind candor, that's what we call it, that
Yes.
kindness, but that
Yes.
candidness. All right, wrapping up. Now that you're married, is there anything as you turn back and see that dating after divorce, is there a piece of advice or is there a tip that you're like, oh, I either wish I would have known that or I'm glad that I did that?
Okay. One piece of advice that I share with everyone is there is no rush. Take your time when you're dating and before you decide to get remarried. And I really feel like as you become more and more serious, you need to discuss every topic. You need to get in deep on finances, on children and parenting and, visitation and holidays. And just there's so many nuances and so many people. I think it's wonderful to have coaching and therapy when you do get remarried and you have a blended family. It's wonderful. It's so helpful and really important. But the more that you can discuss these things openly and honestly before you move forward with that marriage, the better you're going to work through them when you are married, because there's no hidden things. There's no surprises about how you feel or what you're expecting. I would just say communication beforehand and really discussing all the sensitive topics. I think you really need to invest time and energy in that before you get remarried.
Oh, and I love and bookending that with that confidence and with that clarity of being able to know for yourself what is the most important and those core things, not a list of 200 things, but those core things. And then being able to have those open conversations of playing with that and feeling that out and being able to find those places that you can compromise or that you need to stand firm.
Mhm.
Absolutely love this. I know we've got to have you back to talk about blended families because you have rocked that world. But thank you so much for being with us today. This was so delightful.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thanks so much. And for those of you listening, hopefully this was helpful for you or a loved one. And just so you know, we're going to be doing a 3-part series on this. We're going to be doing our next one that is a panel of divorced women who are going to be sharing how to navigate that new life and being able to do it in a way that's joyful and successful. Love that you joined us today. And remember, we are here to help you move forward on your purpose-filled life.